In this video, we're going to build an AI-powered presentation slide generator. And this application will basically create an entire presentation automatically based on any topic you type in. Let me show you a quick demo of what we'll be building. When you come into the application, you will see a basic page that has demo slides, and this is just default demo slides that we have fixed in there. But now what you'll be able to do is to then type in any topic and it's going to generate presentation slides for that topic. So I can do something like machine learning and I can just say generate slides. It's going to take a couple of seconds to generate that slide. So as you can see here, it has successfully generated this slide. You can just swipe through the slide. It's going to generate titles for each show and you can just swipe through all of it like this, and that makes it very easy to do that. And then if you come to the bottom, you have three options. You can download this as PDF, or you can download all the slides separately as PNG files, or you can share this to someone else so they can actually see it. So I'm going to first download this as a PDF and show you. And I'm going to open this up. So this is a slideshow right here, and you can just slide through to see everything, right? So types of machine learning action, getting started with machine learning, and all of this. So this is an example of what it can build. If I come back in here, you can also download this as separate PNG files. Now if you do this, it's basically going to download each slide as a PNG image file on its own. And then most importantly, you can share to others. So I can click on this share button and it's going to basically generate a link that I can use to share to others. If I copy this link and then I open a new tab and then put in that link, it's basically going to show me this slide. Now it gives me this machine learning slide and I can share it to anyone I want, and that person can download the slideshow. They can download the PDF, or they can even create their own version of it and share it to someone else, right? So the difference between this is, if a user comes to the page normally, so if I go back to the page normally, what they're going to see is just the normal demo like this, the normal demo slides. But if you share it to someone, the person is going to see the slides which you actually shared. So we are going to be building this project using the Django framework. For image and text generation, we'll be using Google's Gemini models, specifically Gemini 2.0 Flash and the Nano Banana Pro model. And for deployment, we'll be using Sevalla. This lets us host our Django app and our Postgres database easily. Now let me talk a bit about Sevalla. Sevalla is basically a platform that allows you to deploy your projects. So it could be your application built with Django, React, Flask, or it could even be your database which you want to host in the cloud. It could be your Postgres database, MySQL database, it could be Redis, it could be anything. So it supports a lot of stuff, and for this project we're going to be using it to deploy our Django application onto the web, and we're also going to be using it to create our Postgres database. So if you scroll through the site, you can basically see exactly what they do and what the site is about. As you can see, application hosting, object storage, so you can actually store files from your application, database hosting, and static site hosting, right? So they do all of those stuff. Now, as I said, we're going to be using it in this tutorial, so there'll be a link in the description below, or just go to sevalla.com and make sure you sign up so that you can follow along with this tutorial. And thank you to Sevalla for sponsoring this video. Now, quick note. The source code for this project is available on GitHub and the link will be in the description below. Now, having all this said, let's get straight into the video. The first thing we're going to do is to create a Django project. So I'm right here in my terminal, and what I'm going to do is to go into my document folder. And then inside my document folder, I have a folder called projects. I'm going to go in here, and now I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to say AI slide builder, just like this, and then I'm going to go into that folder. And the next thing I'm going to do is actually create a virtual environment for this project. So I'm going to say virtual env, just like this. Perfect. And now what I'm going to do next is to activate this virtual environment. I'm going to do source env/bin/activate, just like this. And I'm going to clear this up just so it looks nice. The next thing I'm going to do now is to install I'm going to say pip3 install Django, because we're going to be using Django to build this out. Perfect. Now that I have installed this, what I'm now going to do is Django admin start project, and then I'm just going to say AI slides. Just going to add the stuff and say enter, just like this. And I'm going to do ls, and you can see now that we've created the Django project in this particular folder. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to create an app. I'm going to do python 3 manage.py start app. I'm just going to name it slides. So I've created a Django project, and this Django project is where we're going to actually be building this out. And the next thing I created was a Django app. So a project is like the main actual platform that we're building, and an app is a subset of that project. So most features that we're going to have are going to be inside the app. Now, if you're building a very large project, you typically want to have multiple apps inside that project. But for this project, just one app is enough. So now I'm going to open this project up in VS Code. So I'm just going to come in here and open it up. Now I have opened up this project right here in VS Code. Next thing I'm going to do is to just add some setups. I'm going to come into AI slides. I'm going to go into settings.py. Now this slides app that I created, I'm going to come in here and add it to installed apps. I'm going to say slides, just like that. And the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to set up my templates. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say base there / templates, just like this. Now let me explain what this is doing. This is basically saying every time that we need an HTML page or HTML file, it needs to go into the base directory, which is basically the root directory of this project. So the directory that contains the manage.py file, that is the root directory or the base directory. So what this is saying is go into the base directory and look for the folder called templates, and then look for that HTML file that is being requested. Right now we don't have any folder like that, so I'm going to come in here and do templates, just like this. So it's going to go in here and then look for that particular HTML file. For now we haven't created any HTML file, but we're just setting this up for the future. And now I'm just going to close this. The next thing I'm going to do is to come in. I'm going to set up the URLs. Before I even do that, let me just make sure that this is running perfectly. I'm going to open up the terminal right here. I'm just going to deactivate. So this automatically uses this virtual environment, but that's not what we want to use. So now I'm going to press ls to make sure that I'm in this particular directory, and I'm just going to say source virtual environment /bin /activate. Perfect. And now I'm just going to say python 3 manage.py run server. Perfect. Now I'm going to copy this, come into the browser and just paste it. And that should open up our Django project. As you can see, the project has been successfully opened up. Perfect. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to now come and actually set up the URLs. I just want to make sure that everything is working with the URLs. And what I'm going to do is to come in here. So inside slides, I'm going to create urls.py. What I'm going to do is to say from django.urls import path, just like this. And then I'm also going to say from .import views. So this is the default Django method I'm going to import. This allows us to actually signify a path, which is a URL location. And then this is the views. So the views file is where most of the backend of our application is going to be, right? So when a user actually goes to a specific URL, what do we want to show to that user? We're going to do that in the views file, which is this file right here. Now I'm going to say URL patterns. It's going to be equals to your list. I'm going to say path, home, views dot slide builder. I'm going to say name equals slide builder. Just like this. Now what this is saying is if a user tries to go into the home page, which is this empty page, go into views.slidebuilder, look for this function or this class, and then whatever is being done there, that is what you should show to the user when they try to go to this page, which is the home page, right? Now this is empty, so it signifies the home page. If I say slash path, then this means our website.com/path. Or if I say something like slash, about, so this means your website.com/about. But if it's empty, this just means you're saying when the user tries to come to the home page. Now there's actually nothing inside views, so we need to make sure we create this. Also, this name is just showing the name of this particular URL, kind of like an identifier. You can name that whatever you want to name it. It doesn't have to be the same as this or this. Now I'm going to come into this views.py, and then now I'm going to create that particular function. So I'm going to say dev slide builder. I'm going to take a request, and then what I want to do is to return render requests, and then I'm just going to say index.html, just like this. Now what this is saying is when a user tries to go into the home page, go into views.slidebuilder. Now if you then come into views.slidebuilder, it's now saying render this index.html page. Now remember I said when we were setting it up right here, I said whenever we try to render or request for an HTML page, it uses this directory right here, which is under this template list. So this directory is basically saying go into the base directory and then go into the template folder. So this means it's going to go into this folder right here to look for this index.html file. Right now there is nothing, so we need to make sure we actually create that. So we do index.html. Perfect. Let me just say welcome. I'll say AI slide builder. Perfect. Now this is good. The last thing we actually need to do is everything we've been doing right now is under our app, but as I said earlier, our app is actually under our main project, which is this. So we also need to come into the urls.py on our main project and link it with this. So what we just need to do is to come in here and import include, and then we're going to say path empty include slides.urls. Now I'm going to save this. This should work, but let me explain why we did this. So this is saying whenever a user comes to the home page, include slides.urls. So it already recognizes that slide is an actual app. The way it recognizes this is because we came in here in settings and then we added slides as an installed app. So it knows that this slide folder right now is an app. Now what we're now saying in here is if a user tries to go into the home page, go into slides and then go into the urls.py file. So it's going to come into slides right here and it's going to go into this urls.py file, and then it's going to look for the path that matches this exact path. If we come in here, this is the path that matches that path. So whatever is being done here is what is going to render, right? So now we now go into views.slidebuilder, and then if you come into views.slidebuilder, we are now requesting for this index.html page. So I hope that flow makes sense. Now what we now want to do is to test this out. I'm going to come back in here and hit refresh. You can now see that it shows AI slide builder. So this is working now. It actually shows the page and everything that we need. So right now we have this front end in our application, and all that it says is just a basic text saying AI slide builder. What we want to do now is to actually have a view, have a nice UI, have a nice front end. So I have a template that we're going to be working with in this tutorial. I already previewed this template prior to this video to save time. And what I'm going to do is to actually just drop in that template into this Django application that we've created. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to collapse all of this just to make it a bit nicer. Inside templates, I'm going to drag and drop an external template in here. Just like this. I'm going to drop it inside templates. Perfect. Now this is the file, the HTML file for this template. I'm going to close this. This is the entire code for this right here. And I'm going to save this. Once again, this actual template is going to be available in the link in the description below. So the GitHub link to this template as in this current state is going to be available. So you can just take that and follow along with this tutorial. And what I'm going to do, instead of index.html, I'm actually just going to delete this because it's not needed. Move to trash. And then inside views.py, I'm going to change that from index.html to slide builder.html, just like this. Now if I come back in here and hit refresh, you're now going to see that we have this nice looking view, this AI slide builder, and it basically has everything. It has the text, it has the the text input where we can generate slides. For now it has static slides, just random demo slides. This is not AI generated yet. And right here we have two buttons to download it as PDF and also to download the slides as separate PNGs. Now this is what we have here. But let me come back into the code and briefly explain the code. Right here we just have the main HTML. So we have the head, the body, which is basically everything for this, and we're using Tailwind CSS to style it. That's why you can see that all the styling goes in the classes of every element. So that is what this does right here. But the main thing I'm going to explain, once again, I'm just assuming that you have a basic understanding of HTML. So hopefully all of this makes sense. And what I'm going to do is to come into script. So this is where we're using JavaScript to actually make this look nicer. Now I'm going to make this a bit smaller just so you can see it better. Now we have this slide data. This slide data for now is just a static array of images, so that I can actually design the UI before AI exists. So this array right here are the images that you can see right here. So they're just static array of demo images, just so we can have something to show before we start implementing the AI generation into it, right? And that's what this is. But when we actually generate AI images and AI slideshows, this is going to be updated. Now if we come down in here, we have the init function, and what this does is this basically builds the card elements and injects them into the container. So if you come in here, you can see there is a container right here, and it gets element by ID using the slide container ID. So this slide right here is inside a container. If I come back in here and search, you're going to see that we have this div tag that says slide container. Right now it's just an empty div tag, but then what we are doing inside the JavaScript is we are now getting that particular element, and then we are actually building the card element and putting them into that container. So that empty div tag that we had here, we are actually dynamically putting the HTML element in here using JavaScript, right? So it's not actually just empty. That's why even if it's empty right here, when you come in here, you see slideshows, because we've populated that in here in the JavaScript. So as you can see, we've gotten the container, and then in here we're basically just building the entire HTML and everything that we need, the styling and everything, and then we're putting that into, so as you can see, all of this is in here, and then we're putting that into container. And remember, container was this particular page. So that is what that does. And then the last thing I'm really going to talk about in this JavaScript is the update slides function. Now this function basically gives us the central slide full opacity and scale, right? So to just break this down, it basically just allows us to slide. So once I do this, and the animation is nice, and the third one goes to the left, and then the fourth one comes to the middle, all of this animation and all this flow is what we're doing right here in this update slide, right? So basically it pushes the neighbor to the left and the right, right? That's what we're doing in here. And then all of this is just the, the main DOM stuff. And then we're just basically, for now, we're using a timeout, and we're going to change this later. I'm going to explain this part later. You don't really need to understand it now. But I think I've talked about the main things that, that the JavaScript is being used for. And all of these are just the main random default JS that we're using for this script. And then, yes, same for here, right? So this is just, an event listener. So we have the previous button and the next button. These are just IDs for these two buttons, right? And then we're just saying that when each of them is clicked, we want to, do this, and then we want to call the update slides function right here. So hopefully that makes sense. Once again, this template is available on GitHub with the link in the description below. Now, this is what we're going to do. Right now, if I come in here, if this button is clicked right here, right, nothing really happens right here. It's just basically using a timeout, right? And it's basically just, disabling and enabling some of the slides. But what we basically want to do is we want to generate or wire this button to the backend. So once we click on generate slide, it's going to take that topic and then try to generate the slide. For now, we're not actually going to generate the slide. We're going to do that in later steps in this tutorial. But for now, we want to connect this to the backend. So we want this to be able to send information to the backend and get some response. So let's do that. What we're going to do now is we're first going to come into the backend and configure some stuff. Let me increase this back. And what I'm going to do is to basically first come here, and I need to import some stuff. So I'm going to say import JSON. I'm going to use JSON later. I'm also going to use JSON response. No, so we're going to import this from Django the HTTP import JSON response, just like this. And then the next thing that I want to import is cxrf exempt from Django .views .decorators .csrf import csrf exempt, just like this. Perfect. And now what I'm going to do is to then create another function. I'm just gonna say first is gonna be csrf exempt, just like this. I'm gonna say generate slide, and this is going to take a request, just like this. Cancel that. So for now, what I'm just going to do is to say I'm going to first check if request the method is not equals to post. If it's not a post method, then I want to return a JSON response saying that I'm going to pass in error, and I'm just going to say only posts allowed, like this. And then status is going to be equals to 405, just like this, right? Good. So this is basically saying that if the request that has been sent here is not a post request, then we want to flag that, because this should only be post requests. So try. Now we're now going to try to get that the body of the request. So anything that has been sent through a request, through a post request, we want to actually get that. I'm going to say body is equals to json.load request dot, answer this, body to load request of body dot decode, just like this. And we're going to use UTF-8, just like this, right? And then accept json.json decode error, just like this. Now if there is a JSON decode error. This means that whatever is being sent is not actually a JSON, or it's not in a JSON format. Then we want to flag that and say return JSON response. And then we're going to say error. I'm just going to say something like invalid JSON. That's a nice suggestion. And then for this one, the status is going to be 400, not 405. Equals to 400. Perfect. All right. And now what I want to do is to extract the topic from that body. So I'm going to say the topic equals to body.get topic or empty. And then I want to basically strip that just like this, right? So topic would be whatever the user input in here. So if not topic, if there's nothing there, or if we can't get it correctly, then I'm just going to say topic. So for now, I'll just say a blank topic. I'll just say random topic. Just like this. And then for now, I'm going to have hard coded titles for each slide. So what we want to do basically is that whenever a user sends a topic, so when they submit a topic here, we're going to send a request to, we're going to send a request to Gemini to basically generate slide titles for slideshows, right? And then we're going to use the Nano Banana Pro to then generate slideshows for each of those titles under that topic. But for now, let me just add code this topic just for testing. So I'm gonna say introduction to this topic. This is actually a nice suggestion by the assistant. I'm gonna say something like core ideas of topic, just like this. And then I'm gonna say, let me say how this topic works, just like this. And then I'm gonna say use cases of topic. Good. And let me have one more. I'll just say future of topic. Perfect. Just like this. And now I'm going to have the slides. Say the slides that are going to be generated. For now, it's going to be blank. I'm going to say for IDX title in enumerate titles, just like this. Then I'm going to append the information to this slide. So I'm going to say slide dot append. And then I'm going to say ID is IDX. Then the title going to be equals to title. And the image, so this is going to be ideally the image that was generated. For now, let's actually just give it a static image. I'm just going to come into our JavaScript and take one of the static images that we have. I'm just going to copy this. For now, we're just going to give a static image. But obviously, we're going to replace all of this with the actual AI response when we do reach that stage, just like that. So this is exactly what we want to do. I'm just going to come back in here, right? And now I'm going to say return JSON response slides. Perfect. Just like this. Good. Now I'm going to save this, and this is good, right? So let me just quickly run through what we've done. So if the request method is not post, we're sending an error saying we only want a post method. Then if it is a post method, we're going to try to get the JSON element that has been sent, or the JSON data that has been sent, in that request. And if we can't get it, then we're going to send an error saying this is an invalid JSON. But if we can get it, we're going to extract the topic from that particular JSON. And if there is no topic, we're just going to say random topic. For now, we're hard coding the titles of each slide to, under each topic, but Gemini will also generate these later for us. And then we're going to have the slides, and then we're just going to attach this, which is the ID, the title, and the image. For now, also the image is just a demo image. Good. Now we need to go into URLs, and we actually need to also set up if I come in here, we need to make sure that this particular URL page, we're setting it up here. So we need to set that up as an endpoint. I'm going to say something like API/generate slide / just like this. And then I'm going to say views.generate slide. If I come in here, let's make sure that is what this is. Yes, generate slide. And then name be equals to generate slide. Let me change this to generate slides with an S. There's going to be multiple slides we're generating. I'm just going to come in here and actually update this too. Good. So now we have this as an endpoint in here, which is good. This is what we want. Let me make sure I'm having a comma here just to avoid errors in the future. Good. Right? So we have all of this. And now the next thing that we need to do is to now go into our front end. And here, if we come in here, good. So we're adding an event listener, and then we're basically just saying we're getting the generate button. This generate button, if I search for it, so I'm just gonna go here. This button, it has ID of generate button, and it says generate slides, which is this particular button. So if we come back here, what is going on here now is we're saying we're getting that button, and then we're adding an event listener to that button, so that whenever this is clicked, this automatically changed to generating, the text changed to generating, right? And then instead of this timeout, what we want to do is to actually call, send a request to the backend. So I'm going to get rid of this set timeout right here. Right here, I'm going to get rid of this because we actually do not need this. And now I'm going to say try. And then we're basically going to say response going to be equals to await fetch. It's going to be /API/generate slides, just like this, / and then method is going to be post headers is going to be, so we're going to say right, content type should be application/JSON, just like this. And then body should be JSON.stringify topic, right? So topic, if we come here, so we got topic is basically this input, and input is topic input. If we go and search for topic input, it is this actual input here that has this placeholder explain quantum computing, which is this right here. So we're just getting whatever the user writes and we're sending it to the backend, basically. Good. And now that's what we're doing right here. And I'm just going to add a comma. And then here I'm going to have a semicolon, just like this. And now we're going to say data should be equals to await response.json. And then let's just for debugging, let's say console.log response data We'll just say data like this. And then the next thing we want to do is if data dot slides and array dot is array of data dot slides. So we actually get that, let's close this. Then slides dot data or slides data dot length is going to be equals to 0, just like this. And then data dot slides dot for each of those slide s slides dot push s, yes, perfect. And then active slide is equals to 0. Good. And now we're going to, so what this part is doing is it's basically replacing the in-memory slides with what the backend is returning, right? And then now we're basically going to rebuild a DOM, and we're going to say container dot inner HTML. Let's make that blank and then run init again. Good. Now else, let me see if this is not true. Then we'll say console dot error, and we just say no slides in response, just like this. Add a semicolon. Good. And now we add a try. Let's have, so here we're just gonna say catch error, and then we'll just say console dot error, no slides. Actually, the error for this should be saying error calling the API, something like this. And then error. Nice. And then we're gonna have finally generate button dot disabled should be equals to false, and then generate button dot text content should go back to generate slides, which is the initial text content that we have here. Perfect. Now I'm going to save this, and then we're going to come back in here. Let me quit this real quick. We'll come back in here and hit refresh. You can see that the site is completely broken. That means there's something wrong in what we just coded. So if I come here, we have the await being flagged. So whenever we use an await, we always need to make sure that the function that is inside is marked as async. So if I come in here, yes, right here, we have this, but we didn't put async. Good. Now you can see that error is gone. If I come back in here now and hit refresh, this should work. Perfect. Now let me just test something and just say test topic. Now this it changed to generating for a quick second, and then as you can see, all the images were replaced with that one demo image that I placed in here in the backend. Remember, I placed one demo image in here in the backend. So that just shows that at least we know that this flow is working. I can send a request to the backend and get information of all the generated slides. That is good. Now we can actually move forward. So now this is what we want to do. Right now, what we have is just, if I come in here, we basically have just demo default titles that are being generated for each topic. This is not what we want to do. What we want to do is we want to actually use Gemini to generate real slide titles. So not these fake titles. We want it to actually generate real titles that will be dynamic and will be different depending on what the topic is. So what we're going to do is to actually use the Gemini 2.5 Flash model, and then we're going to send a request for it to basically generate titles for this particular topic, and then Gemini is basically going to give us that response back. The first step we want to do is to actually just generate these titles. Then we will go on to generate the slides for each of those titles. Now, the first thing we need to do before we can even do this is to come in here, and you need to go to aistudio.google.com. So this is Google's AI Studio. And what you need to do here is to actually get the API key. So you need to come here and just get your API key. So what you can do is to come in here, say view API keys, and just import project. So you could have multiple projects. What you can just do is to basically create a new API key. And for now, I'm just going to name it AI slide tutorial. And then you can select a project, right? So you can import projects from your Google Cloud, or you can just even create one project right here, or you can just select a project. So I already have one project imported. I'm just going to create a key for this. So the link to this platform will actually be in the description below. So this is it. And then you can actually just copy that API key right here. So once you've copied the API key, click here to copy it. What you can now do is to come into your code, and then you can open up your terminal and just cut out of this server. And what you can do is to say export Google API key, and literally just put in the key you just copied and hit enter. And that is what you need to do. And now you can run your project again, just like this. Now our application basically knows the Google API key, and now you can build AI applications using this. So this is all you need to do to get your API key. It's very easy now to get a Google API key. So just go to aistudio.google.com. There'll be a link in the description below, and then once you've gotten that, we can move on. Now what you now need to do is to come into views.py, and we basically want to come in here. So we're going to use the Google's library, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually open up this Google platform again, and then you're going to see how we can use. If I come into dashboard, you can see how we can use this, right? So this is what we can do to use this. This is basically the code. So I'm going to come back in here and just implement that. First, I'm going to come here and do from Google import Gen AI, right? And then from Google.Gen AI import types. You're going to see why we're using this and how we'll use it as we move on. So let me cancel this. Just like this. And now I'm going to come in here, and I'm actually going to create. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to do client would be equals to Gen AI dot client. Just like this, right? Perfect. And now this is basically initializing this client right here. And what we can now do is to create basically an helper that will help us generate slide titles with Gemini. So this will just be a function, and what this function is going to do is to just generate slide titles. So it's going to take the topic as an input and then generate slide titles. So under here, I'm just going to say def generate slide titles. I'm going to take a topic of string, and then say list string, and then what we're going to do is to say prompt would be equals to, and what I'm actually going to do is to just paste in this prompt and basically explain what this prompt is doing. I'm going to come here and paste in this prompt. So this is our prompt, and I'm just going to say you generate slide titles for presentations, return exactly 5 slide titles for a beginner friendly talk about this topic. The topic will be whatever the user inputs in here, just like that. And now what we now need to do is to say we must return only a valid JSON, right, in this exact structure. So we want literally just a JSON, and it's going to have slides, and then going to have that slide is going to have a list, and that is just going to be a list of the titles, literally. So this is literally just what we want, and then we can parse it from this, and that is our prompt. Now once we've given it that prompt, I can then come here and say try response equals to, now I can send a request client.models.generate content like this, and then the model I'm just going to use Gemini 2.0 Flash, just like this, and then the content going to be equals to text, and then the text is just going to be this prompt that we created right here. So just going to pass in the entire prompt just like that. And now we're going to have config, so we want to make sure that it returns only a JSON response. So types dot generate config, right? So dot generate content config, just like this. We're going to say response underscore format. Now actually we want to say response underscore mine underscore type would be equals to application slash JSON. So it should only be a JSON response, just like this. Perfect. Good. And now for now we're just going to say raw is going to be equals to empty, like this, and then we're going to say for part in response dot parts. So this is basically how you get response from a Gemini call. So you say for part in part dot parts, and then we're just going to say if part dot text, then raw it's going to be plus equals part dot text dot strip, just like this, and then we just want to print that, print raw title generation response, and then we just print the raw response. And now what we can now do is to say data would be equals to json.load, and then we're going to load that raw response. And now we're then going to extract the titles from it. So titles would be equals to s title, then we're going to say for s in data dot get slides or empty if title in s, just like that. Now if the length of titles is equals to 5, because for now we're literally asking for 5 slide titles. Now if it is equals to 5, we're going to say return titles. Perfect. So except exception as e, So this except is for this try statement. We're just gonna say print title generation failed. And then we just want to show the error. Good. Now we also want to have a fallback just in case this doesn't work. We still just want to use the demo titles that we had earlier. So introduction to topic, like this. And then we just say core ideas for topic, how topic works, use cases of topic, and future of topic. Perfect. So now we have this function, and I'm telling Gemini, give me exactly 5 titles in JSON shape. Then I can parse it, and if anything fails, I just fall back to the default, which is this. Good. So now that we have that, I'm now going to come into the actual generate slide endpoint. And right here, instead of just using this, static titles, what I'm now going to do is to call this function, which we call the Gemini model, and actually generate dynamic titles for each topic. Good. We're going to come in here, and we're already not here. We're going to come in here. We're already checking all of this. Nice. Getting the topic. If not topic, then new topic. Then from here, what we basically want to do is to just say, so here we're saying, after saying random topic, we'll just first of all print topic from client. So we're just saying the topic that we've gotten from the client view is this. Nice. And then to get the titles, we're gonna say generate slide titles, which was the function we created earlier, and we're going to pass in this topic. Nice. And then we now want to actually print these titles in the, I'm going to print this in the terminal. This is just for debugging, just so I know that it's actually generating these titles like this, and then we'll say titles. Perfect. And now what I'm going to do is to just, so we have slides on here, right? And then it basically says for IDX title in enumerate titles. Good. Slides to append, and it's giving everything that we need, right? For now, we're still having this static image. Once again, we'll change this when we're actually generating the slides using the Gemini model. Good. So now everything should be working. I'm going to save this. Now I'm going to come back in here and hit refresh. So it can't connect to that. That means something is wrong with this. So we have this error saying no module named Google. Let's cut out of this server. We need to do pip3 install Google Gen AI. So this is the package that we need. And once this has been installed, everything should work perfectly fine. We're going to give that a second to install everything that it needs. It installs a couple of other packages that is required for this package. Just going to quit this. Good, that has been installed. And now I'm just going to run the server again, and this should work without any problems. Let's give that a second to just load up everything. Good, perfect. I'm going to come back in here, and I'm going to come in here and just hit refresh. Good, this works. Now what I'm going to do is to just test this out and say something like large language models generate. Okay, so it took a while to generate, just a little seconds, because it actually generated dynamic slide titles. But for now, obviously the actual slides are still just this demo. But if I come in here, and you can now see that the raw title response actually generates slides. So it generated slide titles. The first one said, what are large language models? The second one said, LLMs, how do they work? Third one is uses of LLMs. Fourth one is benefit and limitations of LLMs. And last one is getting started with LLMs, right? and this is just them in list format. So this is telling us that, okay, good, the titles are actually being generated. Now if I put something else and say something like Django, right, and we generate slides, if I come back in here, you can see that it's totally different. The first one is Django, web development for beginners. What is Django? Setting up your Django environment and everything, which is very good, right? And you can already even see that it is already adding the actual titles on here, right, on the slide. So the first slide actually has the title right here because we already set this up in the JavaScript on the front end. The second slide has the second title, what is Django, AI level overview, what is Django, AI level overview, and so on. So we have this flow working, which is very good. Now what we are going to do is to actually use Nano Banana Pro to generate the slide images. So I'm going to come in here. Let me just quit this. Just like I had an helper function to generate the titles, I'm going to have another function that would generate the actual images. So there's something we're going to use here, and it's called base64. I'm going to import base64 just like this, and I'm also going to import IO just like this. So I need to import this, and then I'm going to come in here. I'm going to create so in here I'm going to create a function, and I'm just going to say generate slide image, and then it's going to take a title, and then it needs to take the entire topic just so the model has enough context. None, just like this. Good. So this is it right here, and now we're going to have a prompt. And once again, I'm just going to copy this prompt in here as I've already written it, and not this. So it says create a modern presentation slide style illustration for a talk about this topic. The focus of this slide is the particular title, and then I'm just saying it should be minimal, clean, soft colors on a light background, no dense body text, and so on. If you even want to make this advanced, you can add options so the user can choose the style they want, if they want it minimal, or if they don't want light colors, say they want dark colors. They can even add their own styling if you really want to take that further. But now what we want to do is to just say print, and then we're just going to say generating image with prompt, and then I'm just going to put in the prompt just so we show that it's actually doing that. Now we're going to try to send a response. I'm going to say response. So we're going to try to send a request, not a response. The client, the models dot generate content model will be equals to. Now we're going to use the Gemini 3 Pro image preview, just like this. This would help us generate an image and content. It's just going to be equals to prompt, just like this. Is how you do it for an image, and then config will be equals to types dot generate content config image config should be equals to types dot image config. So now what we're doing is to just set the aspect ratio, and then we're just gonna say aspect ratio, and this should be 16 by 9, like this. Perfect. And then let's also add a comma here, just like this. Perfect. And now I'm just going to say print image generation response. Just pass in response. And now what we're going to do is something similar to what we've done in the earlier function. We're just going to say for part in response.parts, and then we're going to say if part dot inline underscore data, then image byte equals to part dot inline data dot data, like this. And now we're gonna have encoded be equals to base 64 dot b64 encode image byte. So we're encoding the image byte dot decode, but we want to decode using ASCII, just like this. And this should be bytes, just like this. Now mime type should be equals to part dot inline underscore data dot mime type or image slash JPEG, just like that. And now we're gonna get that data URL. So data URL would be equals to f data. So this is the format you have to type to get that data URL, and then semicolon base 64, and then encoded, just like this. And then let's just print generated image data URL, and then data URL truncated to 80, like this. And now let's return data URL. Perfect. So we have this try statement. We have to do except exception as e, print error in generate slide image, and then just show the actual error, and then return none. Okay, good. So this should work. And now what we just need to do is we need to, so this works. We have this function that basically we're just taking the title and the topic, send it to Gemini, and then we're going to extract that image and put it as a URL right here. Now the next thing we want to do is inside generate slides function. So this is an endpoint that we've created. Now what we just want to do is to come in here where we have this particular block. So what we want to do is where we have slides.append, we're going to say image URL would be equals to generate slide image, which is what we've just created right here. So generate slide image, I'm going to pass in the title, this, I'm going to pass in the topic, this. Good. And we're just going to say if image URL is none, then we're just going to have a default image URL. This is if the image URL is none. Good. Good. Is what we need. But if that is not the case, then we're going to do slice.append. ID is still idx, title is title, and then now image should be image URL. Just like this. Perfect. I'm going to save this now. Let's open up a terminal. Good. It's running. And I'm just going to copy Django again. I'm going to hit refresh. And now saying Django. So we have an error. If I come back in here, you can see that it says there is no image config. So we have to copy this and paste this and see where that's coming from. So this should be small o. Let's try this again. Hit refresh. We get an error. It's still loading. Good. Hit refresh. And now let's say Django. Generate slides. Now this should take a bit more time to generate it because it's going to generate the titles and then it's actually going to generate the slide images. So let's give that a couple of seconds to generate. You can come in here and track how it's doing. So it has generated a title for that, and as you can see, it's also getting the image URL. So generated image data URL, this is it, and then it's going to do that for every single one of that title for that topic. As you can see, it has generated that for us. So it generated welcome to Django, a beginner's guide. It generated a slide right here, which is the first slide. What is Django and why do we use it? It's generated a slide, which is very nice. Setting up the first Django project is generated that. Understanding Django key components, and the last one is generated that. And now we come back to the first page. Good. So this is working perfectly fine. So now we have this working. The next thing we want to do is to just make the UI look a bit more nicer, and specifically the user experience. Right now the UI is good, but when we try to generate a new slide or a new slideshow, nothing really goes on. The only thing that changes is this text. It changes to generating. But what we want to do is when we try to generate a new slideshow, we want a nice UI, a nice like loader that is going to be loading until that slideshow is ready, just to keep the user engaged. So let's do this. I'm going to come back into my code and we're going to go into the HTML. So slide builder.html. Now the first thing that we want to do to be able to fix this is, or to be able to add this new feature, is that we want to come in here. So I'm going to come all the way into my script. So right before I close this main tag, I'm basically just going to add a basic div tag, and this div tag would be the div tag that represents the overlay, right? I'm going to come here like this and hit paste. So this is the code right here. Once again, all of this code is available in the description below on the GitHub. So this is it. This is the div tag. It has an ID of loading overlay and it has the class for the styling. So once again, this is using Tailwind CSS. So this is all the classes. And then inside there, we have this div tag. And then once again, we have all the styling. And right here, this will show the actual spinner that is loading, right? That's what this div tag is for. And this is all the styling. Once again, it uses classes because we are using Tailwind CSS. And then we're just going to have a text that says generating slides. So this is a p tag, just like that. Now the next thing I want to do is I'm going to come into the generate slides text. So this text right here, I'm going to look for that, which is this right here. And what I want to do is I want to change this right to something else. So what I'm going to do is, instead of just having this basic text, I'm going to use this. So we also want a simple spinner in there. So right here, I'm just going to say generate text, right? And I'm going to give you a user span tag for that. And then I'm going to add another span tag just for the spinner. I'm going to give it an ID of spinner. And then we're going to say class. And we're just going to style it using Tailwind, right? That's what that does. And now the next thing that we want to do is to basically go into our JS, right? And I'm going to come here and I'm going to go to the script and I'm going to look for the generate button. So generate button dot add event listener. So where we're listening to when that button is clicked. In here, what I want to do, so at the top part we should have this, and now what I want to do is I want to basically add some new stuff. So yeah, once the button is clicked, we're basically disabling that button, and then we're changing the text content to generating. So we're changing this content to generating. Now we're still going to do the same thing, but then I want to basically add new rules. So if I just paste this is going to be the exact same thing. So let me just make sure we're pasting the correct thing, like this. And this is doing the exact same thing, and this is still also doing the exact same thing. It's changing the text content to generating. We're using document.getElement per ID, but then we're also getting the spinner. So remember the spinner that we had earlier, and we're removing the class list hidden. So hidden basically makes the spinner not visible to the user. And then also the loading overlay, we're changing the style opacity to 1. Now opacity is basically how transparent this is, right? And then we're giving it 1. And then once again, we're changing the pointer events of that overlay to auto, right? So we're just adding new styles to it whenever this button is clicked, right? This means that the user is currently generating a slide. Now that's what happens once the button is clicked. But when the user when the slide has been generated and it has been populated in here, we then want to remove all of this, right? We want to remove the overlay, we want to remove the spinner, we want to change the text back to just generate slide. So we want it to basically come back to its default format. So what we're going to do is go into finally. So we have this try statement and we have this catch, and then we have finally, right? So this finally part is basically where everything has been done. So when all of this has been done, when we've sent this request to this endpoint and we've gotten all the responses and we've done everything we need to do for the slide, then we can then change the UI or make updates to the UI here. So I'm going to do the exact same thing, and I'm just going to come in here and paste this just like this, right? So now generate button.defaults disabled should be false. This means this button shouldn't be disabled no more. It should be usable now. It should be clickable once we've generated the slides. And then the spinner, we want to add hidden. So we want to hide that spinner once the slides has been generated. And the generate text, we want to change that back to generate slides, which is this. And then we want to change the opacity of loading overlay to 0. And then we want to change the pointer events to none, just like this. And this is basically all we need. And I'm going to save this, and now let's try this out. I'm going to come back in here and hit refresh, and let me just say something like Earth versus Venus. Good. Now you can see we have this nice UI that shows it loading, and while this is generating the slides, it just shows that. And once the slides has been generated, it's also going to remove that from here. Now this is good. This just makes the user a bit more engaged, right? Just it makes more sense to have something like this. And we're going to give you a couple of seconds to generate that slide, and I'll be back once it is done. So as you can see, this slideshow has been generated. We have this about Earth versus Venus. We have everything we need for the slide. This is pretty good, pretty nice, and everything has been successfully created. Good. And that UI works perfectly fine. So right now, what we want to do is to basically allow a user to be able to download this slideshow as PDF, or download all of the images on this slide as separate PNG files. So this is what we want to do now. Right now we have these buttons, but if I click on them, nothing happens. So I want them to do that. I'm going to come back into my code. The first thing I'm going to do is to scroll all the way to the top, and I'm going to open the heading tag. Right here, I'm going to add one script. Now this script uses JS-PDF. If I paste this script, so this uses JS-PDF. So this is basically the JS-PDF script. Is basically the link to help us use that. And this basically allows us to convert images to PDF. That is what this does. Good. Now the next thing that I'm going to do is to come into the buttons. So these buttons for this, I want to see that their IDs so I can then use them in JavaScript. So I'm going to come into where we have download as PDF, download as PNG. Good. So I have the button. Let me look for its ID. Okay, right now, as you can see, these two buttons do not have IDs. What I'm going to do is to give them IDs. So I'm going to say ID equals download PDF button. Perfect. And then I'm also going to give this an ID, and I'm going to say download PNG button. Now I'm going to save this. Now these two have IDs, and what I can now do is to come into the script, and in the script I'm going to go into my DOM content loaded handler. I'm going to come into where we have document.add event listener DOM content. Good. Now what I want to do is to add button references for each of these buttons, right? Now what I'm going to do is right here where we have these references for topic input and generate button, I want to do the same for the download PDF button and the download PNG button. So I'm going to do constant. I'm just going to say download PDF button going to be equals to document dot get element by ID, and this should be download PDF button, just like this. And I'm going to do the same for download PNG button. So this is a good suggestion, just like this. And now this is what we need to have. The next thing I want to do is to add a PNG export handler. So I want to have an handler that will basically export all of this slide as separate PNG files. So once this PNG button is clicked, we want that handler to be called. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here. So right after this, so where we have generate button, add event listener. So right here, I'm gonna click on this. Right after this, I'm gonna create a new handler. I'm actually just gonna paste this in and explain what it does. So this right here, what it's gonna do is once download PNG button is clicked, if we come in here, remember that download PNG button is this, which is this button right here. Once that is clicked, we basically want to loop through the slides data, and then obviously if there is no image, then we want to just return nothing. But if there is an image, we want to get the link to that image. So link equals document.create element, right? If we're first going to create an empty link element, then we're going to say link.f is equals to slide.image. So this slide, we want to actually get that image and convert it into a link. And then link.download, we want to download this as PNG. So we're going to say slide 1.png. Now depending on the index, if the index is 2, it's going to be slide 3.png. If the index is 4, it's going to be slide 5.png. So obviously we know the index starts from 0, and this is the index here. That's from 0. So 0 plus 1 is going to be 1. So the first slide is going to be slide 1, and so on and so forth. And then we're just going to say document.body.append child link, right? And link.click and link.body remove child link. So what we're basically doing is we are then appending this link, which is this A tag, to the entire document. Then we're clicking that link because we know it's going to download that file, and then we're removing that link once it has been downloaded. That's basically what this handler does. Now, the next thing we want to do is And just so just so you understand, the actual link for these images is what Gemini returns for us. So the data URL is what we're going to be using, and it's going to save each one as a separate file. And the next thing is to add a PDF export handler. This is where we actually use that JS PDF that we imported earlier. So right under this also, I'm going to paste this in and also explain what it does. So this one is a bit more lengthy. Just like this. Perfect. Now we have this. This is the handler, and it takes download PDF button, add an event listener. So when it's clicked, it first makes sure if not window.js PDF. So if we don't have this, we want to just return nothing. And then we basically want to get JS PDF so we can use it in here. We want to have a constant, just saying landscape px or a4, which is basically the format we will accept, and let first page be equals to true. And basically we're looping through that slide again, doing the same thing. So for each slide, making sure that there is a slide, and then if the slide.image starts with data, so yeah, I put a comment saying only treat data URLs as AI slides, right? So if it doesn't start with that, then that means this is not the image for that slide, or it's some random image, right? So we're just adding a checker there, and now we're just creating, variables for everything. So the image data will be slide.image, image props will be pdf.getImage properties, which is image data. Then we're going to get the width, so PDF width will be pdf.internal.pagesize.getWidth. We're going to get the height using this calculation, the offset y using that calculation, and the format we're saying it can use this formats. And now we're just saying if this is not the first page, then page.add, then we're basically going to make first page equals false, because initially first page is going to be true. Basically, when we're building this PDF file, we want first page to be true, and then once we already have a first page, we then want to do pdf.add page, right? So for each slide, if this is not the first page, we just want to add that slide to the first page, which is then going to be the second page, and then going to be the third page, and so on and so forth. And then we want to say first page is false because we're no longer doing first page. And then we're just going to say pdf.add image. So we're going to add all the information, the image data, the format, and all the information it needs, right? The width, the height, and everything. And then we're going to save that PDF as AI slides.pdf. So that is basically what we need. And now I can just save this right here. So now let's actually try this out. I'm going to come here and I'm just going to say the solar system. And now I'm going to click on generate slides. So now let's give it a couple of seconds to actually generate this slide for us. Okay, so as you can see, this slide has been successfully created in a very nice slide. Talked about the sun, talked about the planets, asteroid comments, the moons, and everything. Now let's try out these download buttons. So let me click on download as PDF. As you can see, that downloaded, it's downloading nice. Let's give it a second to complete downloading it. Good. Now I'm going to open it up in a new tab, and let's just see. Nice. As you can see, this works nice. It shows us the slideshow, all of the images, and everything works. Obviously, for now, we just kept this to only 5 slides, but you can increase it as much as you want. Just for testing, we're leaving it as 5. And now we can also try to download all the slides. So as you can see, it's downloading 5 slides right here. 5 downloading progress, it says. And it's basically going to download all of that slides, and we can open each of those ones separately. So I'm going to start with the first one, just like this. As you can see, that is the first one, and then we can try the second one. Good. And then the third one. Good. Then the fourth one, and then the last one, just like that. Good. So we've successfully built this out. Once again, there is free will to build whatever you want, right? You can make this download and is in a zip file, or you can make it be 11 slides, or may even allow the user to customize the amount of pages they want. You can really do whatever you want. But for now, we've successfully built out an AI slide builder or presentation builder. Now, this is the next thing that we want to do. So we want to be able to share a slide. So whenever a user creates a slide, right now, if they quit that page, the slide is gone, right? What we want to do is to be able to generate like a share code so that a user can basically just view the slide again if they want to. So that's what we're going to do. Now, what I'm going to do is we need a database to actually save this slide information. So earlier in this tutorial, I talked about Sevalla. Sevalla is a platform that allows you to deploy your apps for free. So you can deploy your Django apps, your React apps, and any app you build. But they don't only support apps, they also support databases. So you can actually deploy databases on here, and that is what we're going to do. So we're going to deploy a Postgres database on here. There will be a link in the description below. Just sign up. It's free. As you can see, you get $50 free credits to play around with. So just click the link in the description below and sign up. And once you've done that, it's going to take you to your own page. So this is what your own page should look like. And now we're going to create a database by coming to this database section right here. And we're going to click on create database. So there's so many options: Postgres, MySQL, MariaDB, Redis, Valkey. So many. I'm just going to stick with Postgres. And the version is going to be 17. And I'm probably just going to leave all of this as it is, just like this. And then I am going to create database. And as you can see, the database has been created successfully. So as you can, the status is saying it's still creating, but all the information that you need has been created. So as that is still being created, what I'm going to do is to just go into our application and set up this database in there. So what the main thing we need is our Postgres URL. So this database URL right here, this is exactly what we need. I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to come into our project, and in here I'm actually going to create a .env file, right? I'm going to close this, and in here I'm going to create .env because we don't want to expose this information directly in our code. I'm going to create an environment variable file where we're going to store environment variables, and I'm going to say database underscore URL, and I'm going to paste in the link that I got, right? So this is exactly what we need to do. If I come back in here, this is exactly what it is. So there are different ways you can actually set this up. As you can see, it says it's ready, which is good. Now I'm going to come in here, and then I'm just going to save this. Good. And I'm going to go into settings. By default, Django uses SQLite. So as you can see, we have this SQLite database, but we're going to change it to make sure it uses this Postgres database we've created on Sevalla. So the first thing we need to do is to make sure we have DJ database URL installed. I'm going to come here. I'm just going to cut out of this server, and I'm just going to do pip3 install DJ database URL, just like this. Now that has been installed. I can run the server again. Good. Actually, one more thing I want to also install is .env. So I'm going to say pip3 install .env. Good. I can run my server again, make sure everything is working fine. Good. And I can come in here, and I now want to import DJ database URL, and also I want to import from .env import load.env. So what this is doing is that it's basically this DJ database URL. We're going to use it to connect to our Postgres database, and this .env is going to allow us to get information from the environment variable files that we created earlier. Now in here I'm going to say load.env, just like this, base there /.env. So I don't really like spacing. I'm just going to put it like this. Perfect. I'm going to save this. Now I can come all the way to the database, and instead of doing this, I'm actually just going to copy this and paste it here. I'm just going to comment this out. So instead of using this SQLite, what we're going to do is under default. So default is not going to be a dictionary no more. The default is going to be DJ database URL .config, like this, and then we're going to say default would be equals to os environ basically dot get database URL, just like this, right? And this is basically just getting the environment variable, which is the database URL that we created earlier. Now we're getting an error for OS. We just need to go all the way to the top right here. Just gonna scroll to the top and import OS. Good. Now we have this done. The next thing we need to do is to go into models. I'm gonna come into my app, which is slides, and I'm gonna go into models.py. Now right here in models.py, I basically want to create the tables for that are going to be in this database. So the tables that will actually store this slides information, I need to create them here. And we're going to use a class to create them. I'm going to say shared slides, like this, models.model. And then the first one is going to be a share code. So when a user tries to share a slide, we want that to be a code. And then that code will be used to retrieve the slide by any other person. It's going to be a character field. Yes. And then max length is going to be, let's say max length is 12. And then unique is true. Perfect. And then we're going to have the slides JSON. So the actual data is going to be a JSON. And then it's going to be models.json field. Just like this. Perfect. And then we're just going to add a timestamp for when it was created. So yes, model.datetime field and auto now add equals true. Perfect. This is what we need. Now the next thing we need to do is to just say, okay, right here we're having an error because we don't have scicub2 installed. So let me quickly explain this. Scicub2 is basically a library that allows Django to connect to Postgres. So we just need to cut out of this server, and then we're just going to say pip3 install scicub pg2 binary, just like this, and this should do the work. Now if we try to run the server again, it should be fine. Just gonna give that a second, and that should run perfectly fine. So we get this error. What we need to do to fix that error is to basically enable external connection, so we can test out that our Postgres database works locally. Right now we only have internal connection, which means only applications within the Sevalla ecosystem will be able to connect to this database. So to fix this, I'm going to come into networking, and here we see external connection. I'm just going to enable it. Yes, we're just going to say continue. Good. And now we can get our connection URL. Now I'm going to come back in here, and I'm going to go into .env file. And what I'm going to do now is to basically just delete all of this. So this was the URL for the internal connection, but we want to have the one for the external connection. Now I can save this, and what I'm going to do is to cut out of this server and basically run this server again. Perfect. And you can see we don't have that error now. And what I can do is to now do python3 manage.py make migrations. And I can also do python3 manage.py migrate. I'm going to hit enter. Now you're going to see that this works successfully. It's going to migrate all of that. Perfect. Now I'm going to come back in here, and if I go into Studio, you can now see that I have all of the tables we've created. So that is good. And then run our project again. And that should just take a second to run. Good. Now we've successfully connected our Postgres database to our Django application. So the next thing to do is to just make sure that in views, so I'm going to come into views, and right at the top of views, I'm going to import some things. So I'm going to import random, then I'm going to import string, then I'm going to say from.models import shared slides, just like this. Now this, I'm going to use this to generate the random share code for this particular slide, and then this is just the database for that the slides are going to be stored in. And I'm going to create, so in here, right under here, I'll create an helper function. I'm gonna call it make code. So this is what is going to be used to make the code, and the length is gonna be, let's say 6, just like this. And let me see. So we're saying join random choices, right? String the ASCII letters, right? Okay, I think I'm just gonna write this myself. I'm just gonna say return empty dot join random dot choices string dot ASCII, let me say uppercase, plus string dot digits, and k is equals to length. Good, perfect. So this is basically going to generate a random share code that is going to be 6 characters long. Now the next thing I want to do is to create the API endpoints that will actually store these slides into the database. So in here, I'm just gonna say press CSRF exempt, and I'm gonna create share slides. Good. And then I'm just gonna say, let's scroll back there, if request dot method is not equals to post. If that is not true, then we're just gonna return. So yes, let's just return JSON response. That's just gonna say it's only post that is allowed. So it automatically created all of this. We do not want that. So it's basically just saying only posts allowed, and the status is 505. And now we're just gonna say try. Let's see, body is gonna be JSON.loads request.body.decode using UTF-8. Nice. And we're gonna say slides gonna be equals to body.get slides. Perfect. Or and then an empty list if we don't get it. And then we're going to have an except. So except JSON. Actually, we don't want to specify which one, just in general if there's any error. Then we're just going to say something, we're just going to return a JSON response once again. I'm just going to say return JSON response, invalid JSON, and this time the status will be 400. Good. Now I'm going to make the code. So I'm going to say code is going to be equals to make code. Good, which is this. And then we're going to store that into the database. So share slides the object.create share code, if you remember, share code, and we're going to give it the value of code. Good. And then slides JSON, if you come here and remember slides JSON, just going to be equals to slides. Perfect. And now we're just going to return a JSON response of the code. But I think I'll just say code. Perfect. Now this works. Now I want to have a page that I can then use to view or retrieve the slides. So I'm going to say view shared, something like this. And then it's going to take in a request and then the code. So once we have the code, we're going to say try record. We're going to try to find that record. It's going to be shared slide, the object.get, where share code is equals to code. Perfect. Now, except share slide does not exist. Now, if it does not exist, we want to return. We actually don't want to return an error. I think what we just do is to return render request, something like this. Yes, we're just gonna say not found .html. We don't need status, just like this. Perfect. But if that is not the case, then we just want to pass this slides template onto the front end. So we're just going to say return render requests, go to slides builder .html, good, and then we're going to pass in shared slides, good, and it's going to be json.dump record.slides json. Perfect. This should work. One thing we need to do quickly, we need to create not found.html. I'm going to come into templates, create that, paste that, and let's just say slide not found. Perfect. We can close this and come back here. Good. Now we want to go into, we can save this. We now want to go into the urls.py so that we can basically have endpoints that can link to those functions we just created. So after generating slides, we want to say path API / share. Let's just say share, and then that should be views.share slides. Good. And then I'll just give you a name of share slides. And the next one will be to view a slide. So path, and then it's going to be view. And then yes, it's going to take a string, which is a code, and it's going to be views.views shared, and the name will be equals to view shared. Perfect. Now I'm going to save this. And now I'm going to come into the HTML slides builder, and I'm going to update it so that it can actually show a slide if a user actually visited this page through this view shared link. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the script. Good. So now at the top of this script, right before we are bringing in this, right before we are defining the slides data, what we want to do is we want to see if the page was rendered with shared slides, right? To do this, we're going to say cons. We're going to say shared slides will be equals to. Now, if it was rendered with shared slides, remember that that means that we have this shared slides JSON that has been passed in. So we're going to say, we're going to come back here, and then we're going to say shared slides default should be null. Do it like this, and then save. Just like this. Good. So we're basically saying shared slides, and then default should be null, and then save. And the next thing we're going to do is in here, so at the top, now instead of just rendering this slide, what I want to render is the shared slide. So I'm going to say slides data is first going to be equals to shared slides like this, or all of this, right? So if there is shared slides, render that first. But if there isn't, then you can then render all of this, right? Which should be fine now. We're going to come all the way down here, and we want to basically take care of a share button. So in here, we want to have a share button, right? Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a download button. No, not a download button. So right under the download button, I'm going to have a share button. So right here, just going to paste in this block of code. Once again, all of this is available on the GitHub, but this is it. It's a button. It has an ID called shared button, and we have the styling here in the class. As you can see, the styling right here, and then it just says share. Now I'm going to now come into my, so the dump content loaded right here. So right here, I'm going to basically have an handler for the share button. So I'm going to come here, and I'm just going to go all the way to, so we have this, and then we have this in here. Perfect. Good. So let me make sure that everything is good. So we have this which stops here, we have this which stops here, we have this which stops here. Good. Now in here, I'm going to have an handler for this share button, and what this is going to do is it's basically going to call the page, the endpoint that generates this share code. So just going to copy this and paste this in. Good. Now we're saying share button to add event listener. Now once it's clicked, and then we're going to send a request to API/share, which is this API/share. Come back in here, and then using a post method, and then we're just going to get, and we're going to basically pass in the body, right? We're going to pass in the body, which is all the slides data, and then we're going to get a JSON response. We're going to get the data code, which if I come in here into share slides, that is what we're getting in the response, the code, after it has saved everything onto the database. So once we have that, then I just want to show the user the link, right, to go to that code, or to go to that page to view it. And then I'm just going to have an alert saying share this link, and this is the link right here, right? This is perfect. Now the next thing we want to do is we add this share button, but we didn't. If I come up here, we didn't have an identifier for it. I'm just going to say const share button would be equals to document, good, dot get element by id share button. Good, this should be fine. Let's get rid of this. Perfect. This should work. And now we're just going to save this and try. I'm going to save this now. I'm going to come back in here, hit refresh. So that doesn't work. I'm going to come here and just run our code again. So Python 3 manage.py run server. Great. I'm going to hit refresh. Good. Now let me just actually say laws of gravity. And let's make it generate that slide. And once it has done that, we will try to share it. Great. As you can see, we have this slide that has been created, right? Everything is good. Now let's try to share. It gives us undefined. So there's probably something wrong in the backend. Let's go and look at it. If I go into views, let's look at share slides. So if I pop this up, let's see what error that was. That was a 400 error. And if I come here, 400 error happens if this doesn't go through. Oh, as you can see right here, we have a typographical error. This should be body.get. Now let's go back and try it. First, let's make sure that our application is running. Good. Now let's try to share again. We don't need to reload the page since we only made changes to the backend. It still gives us this error. It gives us that error. So it's bad request 400. Interesting. So that means there's something wrong here. Let's go into our front end and make sure that we're actually passing in JSON. So yes, JSON does stringify slides data. Okay. Now, the thing that comes to mind is right here, we have a base 4 image. So I'm going to test something out, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to open this in a new tab. Now, if I try to share right now without creating any image, you can see that that works perfectly fine. It generates the share code for us and the share link. But if I try to share after generating an image, then I get an error. Now, I know why this happens. So the default image that we use right here, if I open this image in a new tab, you can see that the link is just a normal link URL. It's a very short link, straight to the point. But if I come into the one generated by Gemini, if I right click and open a new tab, what you're going to see is that this link is horrendously long. It's very long, right? This is a base 4 image, is a base 4 link, and it spans, it's probably going to be like 1 MB on its own, right, to store this link. It's very, very long, right? And that's just how these links are. Now, the problem with that is Django has a limit for what it can transfer over, so what it can store. So it basically has like a data upload memory size. So it has a maximum memory size it can use for data upload. And this also counts as data upload because we're actually sending it over the server and going to save it into the database. But you can actually increase this if you want. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go into settings. So right here, I'm going to look for settings. I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom. Good, we're already at the bottom. Now what we need to do is to allow larger JSON bodies for our base 4 images, right? So to do this, I'm going to say data upload max memory size, just like this. I'm going to say equals to. Now for 50 MB, this is exactly what you need to do. Say 50 asterisk 1024 asterisk 1024, and this is for 50 MB. Now let's also say file upload. We're not really uploading a file, but just in case, memory size, and it's just going to be the same thing, 50 MB. If we save this now, this should work perfectly fine. So first, let's make sure that our server is running. That's going to take a second to run. Good. Now if I try to come in here and do share, you can see that it now works, right? We have the link for this. And now if I copy this and open it in a new tab, so you can see that this is the slides for the gravity. If I paste this in and open it, it's going to retrieve all of that images and it shows this gravity, right? Which is good. So you can create something now and share it to someone else. Perfect. Now we've successfully built out this entire application. We built everything using Django. We created the database on Sevalla. And the next thing we want to do is now deploy this project onto Sevalla. Let's go ahead and do that. Now that we have successfully built out this application, the next thing we want to do is to deploy this onto the web so people can actually use this application. To do this, we're going to be using Sevalla once again. So Sevalla is hosting our database and it's also going to be hosting our application. But we're going to come back here. We first need to come back into the code and prepare our application for deployment. The first thing we need to do is to come into our env file, and then we need to add a couple of environment variables to prepare this for deployment. The first thing is debug. Let's make it false. And the second one would be allowed hosts. And for now, this is just going to be local host and 127.0.0.1, just like this. And then the third one is going to be our secret key. I'm going to come back and populate this. And the fourth one is going to be CSRF trusted origins. Now this is going to be our actual application's URL. So for now, let's just allow localhost. It's going to be 127.0.0.1 port 8000, just like this. And then the last thing we want to do is our Google API key. And here I'm going to populate this. Perfect. Now this works. Now I'm going to explain what each of these are. So if we come into our settings right here, and then let me bring this closer. So right here, if we come into our settings, all of this information, the allowed host, secret key, debug, and all this information, we want them to be taken from our environment variables, and we don't want to add code them into our project. This is just security measures. Just going to collapse this a little bit. Okay, now the next thing we need to do is to use this instead of what we have in our settings, right? We're going to come back to settings, and we're already loading env. Actually, for this, we just need to do load env just like this, and it should figure that out automatically. And now what I'm going to do is this secret key, I'm actually going to copy the secret key here. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to come into .env, and that's what I'm going to put here as a secret key. Nice. And then I'm going to go back to settings, and instead of add coding it, what I'm going to do now is to just say os.environ.get secret key, just like this. Good. I'm going to do the exact same thing for debug. I'm going to say os.environ.get debug, like this. Perfect. And now for allowed hosts, if I come back in here, you can see that allowed host is a list, right? So this is allowed host, is a list. CSRF trusted origins is also a list, right? So I'm going to come in here. Let me actually copy CSRF trusted origins. And before I do anything, I'm going to say CSRF trusted origins. I'm going to set this up here. And then I'm actually going to CSRF trusted origins. It's going to be a list, right? And then it's going to take it from OS. Now, but what I'm going to do here is, because this is a list, it won't be the same as what I've done there. So I'm going to do os.environ.get CSRF trusted origins, and it's going to split it using the comma, right? So it's going to form a list, and it's going to find the separations using the comma. So it's going to change the commas to basically nothing, and then it's going to use each of those values as a list, just like we've done here. So it's basically going to split these commas and then use this as an element in the list, and this will be the next element in that list. Great. Now we'll come back in there and we're going to do the exact same thing for allowed hosts. So allowed hosts, and split it using this. Perfect. So we have all of this right here, right? This is good. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to come into, actually I'm just going to save this for now, and then I am going to go into env and I'm going to save this. And so we have the debug working, we have local host working, sorry, allowed host, secret key, CSRF trusted origins, the database URL, but we don't have the Google API key working. So what I'm actually going to do is to just put the Google API key in there, like this. Great. And then I'm going to copy this Google API key, and I'm going to close the env file, and I'm going to go into views.py. So in here, right here, we're going to put in the API key, and what I'm going to do before that is to make sure that we have the env imported in here. So I'm just going to say from .env import load env, and then it's just going to load .env like this. And right here where we have this Gen AI client, what we're going to do is just pass in our API key directly right there. I'm going to do API key just like this, os.environ.get, but this is going to be Google API key, what we put. This is basically what we named it in the environment variable. And you can see it's giving us an error for OS. What we just need to do is to import OS. Perfect. This should be fine. So now that we have this, the next step we need to take to make sure that we are ready is to make sure that we basically come into, so I'm going to come into settings, and then I'm going to go into, so where we have middleware, right under here, I'm basically going to say Django. So we basically want to have, actually not Django, we want to have white noise dot middleware dot white noise middleware. So this is a capital W, capital N, and capital M, just like this. And we're going to save this. So we have all of this working right now. And the next thing that we want to do is to come all the way to the bottom. Even if we are not using any static files for this project, it's always best practice is to add static root. So we're just going to say static root, going to be equals to base there / static files. So in production, what is going to happen is it's basically going to take all the static files in here and create a folder called static files, and it's going to put everything in there for production. Good. Now that we have this, the next thing we need to do I'm actually going to open this up and also open up this panel. And I'm going to close this and close this. So you can see that we're getting an error. So it says error importing AI slides module. And right here, it's because we didn't install white noise. So I'm going to come in here and just cut out of this. And then we're going to do pip3 install white noise. And that should basically install that for us. Just a typographical error. Perfect. And then if we try to run this again, it should work perfectly fine. I'm going to give that a couple of seconds. Okay, so it says no margining white noise. If I come in here, I'm pretty sure we are. There's a typographical error here. Yes, it should be NOISE. Let's do that again now, and this should be fine. I'm gonna give that a couple of seconds. Perfect. So now that this works, the next thing that we're gonna do is I'm gonna come here, make sure that everything works locally before we try and deploy it onto the web. So I'm gonna hit refresh. I'm just gonna say London and generate slides. So as that is generating, it's gonna take a couple of seconds, as we already know. I'm gonna come back in here, and there's one thing we need to do. We need to do something called pip freeze. So I'm gonna open a new terminal, and let me make sure that it is. So I'm gonna stop that command. Let me make sure we're in our folder. I'm going to activate this virtual environment right here, source slash venv/bin/activate. Perfect. And now what I want to do is to say pip3 freeze requirement.txt, like this. Now what this is going to do is, if I open this up, now you're going to see that we have a new file called requirements.txt. It's basically going to create a list of all the libraries and packages that we used for this project. If I close this, you can see that we have everything. Now this is very good, and it's a good standard practice, because everything we use in this project will now be deployed alongside the app. And most importantly, the specific versions we used are going to be deployed. Now, for example, Django 6 came out yesterday or a couple of days ago. And for this project, we're using Django 5.2.8. There could be some changes in Django 6. And if I don't specify the version I used to build this project, if I then deploy it onto the web and say the platform I used to deploy it then uses Django 6, there might be some clashes, because maybe something has changed in Django 6 that won't be compatible with this version. So it's always good to, first of all, create a virtual environment for each project, and then also do requirements.txt file for every single project, just so you have everything in there. Best practice. Let's come back in here. As you can see, it has generated the slides for London. Good. So everything still works. We're going to try to share. And let's just make sure everything works perfectly. Perfect. This works. I'm going to close this. I'm going to open it up. Open that particular one up again. And it should show me London. Perfect. So this works. And now that we have everything ready for deployment, we are now going to go into Sevalla. I'm going to come in here, and we're going to come into overview. Actually, not overview. We're going to come to home. Right here. So we have this database created, but what we want to do is to create an application. I'm going to create a new application. We're going to click on create application, and now we're going to use a Git repository. So make sure you connect to GitHub. I'm going to do that. Now if we hit refresh, this should fetch all of the repositories. We actually haven't pushed this onto GitHub. So what I'm going to do is to open up GitHub, and then I'm going to create a new repository, a new repo. I'm going to call it AI slide. And then I'm just going to leave it like that and create the repository. One thing we also want to do in here is to create a .ignore file. I'm going to create .gitignore. I'm going to tell Git to basically ignore virtual environment. I'm going to tell it to ignore, I think that is all I'm going to tell it to ignore, and also .env. Just like this. So I'm going to tell Git to basically ignore the virtual environment and then the .env file. This is once again standard practice. And then now that we have this, that is good. What I'm now going to do is to come in here and I'm going to do git init. Then I'm going to do git add everything. I'm going to come in here now. So we've done init, we've done add, we're just going to commit. So to save time, I'm just going to copy the command. I'm going to say git commit full app build. I'm going to commit all of that, and then we're going to branch main. I'm going to run this, connect it, and then now we can push it. Just like this. Perfect. Now if I come in here and hit refresh, good, this works. So you can see the code is there now. Now there are two things I can do. I can come in here and I can hit refresh and it should automatically see that, or I can just add it as a public repository. But let me just search AI slides. Perfect. And yes, auto deploy. And this is the name. And for the location, we need to make sure the location is the same as the database that we created earlier. Now the database that we created was, for me personally, the location was Finland, Europe North 1, which is good. And the resource, I'm just going to keep it like this. And good, this is what we need. I'm just going to create application. So the application will be created successfully. Good. And now we're basically going to do some configurations before we actually deploy. Let me just cancel this. So what we're going to do now is to first come into our environment variables, and I'm just going to add some environment variables. So the first thing I want to add is allowed hosts. I think I'm just going to come into the env file right here and just copy it. So allowed hosts like this. And actually before I do this, I want to go back and go to overview, and this domain right here is the domain our application will be deployed on. So I'm going to copy that. For now we haven't deployed anything, so I'm going to come into environment variables, click on this, and for allowed hosts, I'm actually just going to paste that domain in here. I'm going to add another one, and the next one is going to be CSRF trusted origins. I'm going to paste this. I'm going to copy this again, and I'm going to paste this in here. So for the allowed host, you should not have HTTPS. You just need to have only the URL right there. And for the CSRF trusted origins, you should have everything, the full URL. And the next thing is our secret key. I think for this, I'm actually just going to copy the secret key that Django created like this. And then the last thing I'm going to put in here is the Google API key. I'm just going to copy this and paste this in here. Perfect. So the database URL, we don't need to do this, and debug, we also don't need to do this. So by default, Sevalla already knows that this is production, so it's going to set a debug automatically. And for the database URL, we're actually going to automatically connect that right here in Sevalla. You're going to see that in a second. Good, so this has been added. The next thing we now want to do is to go into overview, and then we want to connect an internal connection. I'm going to select a service. This is the database service, and then I'm going to add environment variables to the application. Now the only thing we need is just the database URL, which is this, and let's name that environment variable exactly what we named it here, which was database URL. We're going to change that, and then we're going to add internal connection. And that should take a second to add that for us. Perfect, that has been added. If you now come back into environment variables, you should see database URL there. Good. So now that all of this has been done, basically you have everything we need to do. So now the next thing we need to do is to come into settings, and we basically need to have our custom start command, right? So to do this, we're basically just going to say Python manage.py migrate, and then Python manage.py collect static, just like that. And the last thing we want to add is gunicorn, and this is going to be the name of this right here. So the name of this folder where your settings.py file is AI slides. So gunicorn AI slides, and you're just gonna say .wsgi. Come here and make sure this is on small, and just update the processes. Perfect. Now everything is done. You just need to click on deploy. Yes, we're deploying the main branch, and deploy. And this is going to take a couple of seconds, roughly a minute to deploy. And when it has been deployed, I'll be back. So it has successfully deployed, but it doesn't work. So on here, you can see it says crashed, and then I opened it up and it says this. If I come into the logs, you can see that most things are working except Gunicorn, like Gunicorn. It can't find that. And let's make sure that it's in requirement.txt, because we didn't actually install this. I'm gonna click on this, so it's not there. Now what I'm gonna do is to just say gunicorn, save this. Just gonna bring this up. Just gonna do git add, and then I'm just going to commit. And then I'm just going to push. Okay, great. That has been pushed. I'm gonna come back to overview, and you can see it's automatically deploying. We come back in here and then go into requirements.txt. We should see that we now have gunicorn. So let's wait for that to deploy. Okay, so now as you can see, this has been deployed successfully. Now let's try it again. So I'm going to click on this domain, and let's see if that opens it up successfully. Perfect. As you can see, everything works perfectly fine. So that works, and we successfully built and deployed this app onto the web. This brings us to the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching this video up to this point. I hope you understood everything that we did in this video. Once again, all the links used in this video will be available in the description below. The link to the GitHub, the link to sign up for Sevalla so that you can create the database and also deploy your application onto the web, and everything I used in this video, the link will be in the description below. Thank you so much for watching once again. I hope you enjoyed everything we did, and I'll see you in the next one.